Okay.
Okay.
And Facebook is coming up now, so just one moment. And I'm going to bring in everyone now.
We are live, so let's go. We'll just go the way through. Okay. Facebook is coming up now. So just one moment. And I'm going to bring in everyone now. We are live, so let's go. We'll just go the way through.
Okay, everyone, just one moment while all the participants join. Karen, you're unmuted.
Thank you. Let me know when we're ready to go.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to continue to admit people as they
Okay.
enter the waiting room.
And everyone else will be muted until it's time for them to speak.
Yes.
There we are. Okay, great. Okay, well, we'll jump right in and get started in the interest of starting on time. All right, welcome community to this Peterborough community listening session. I want to cover the schedule, let you know what's going to happen, and then I'll make an opening statement, and then Nicole will cover how we're going to do this, and we'll move forward. So our schedule is to begin now. We'll do a welcome and introduction of our panelists, if you will. I'll read the opening statement. Nicole will do the guidelines and logistics. The chiefs will each just have a chance to say a few words to each of them has a chance to do that. And then we will go into listening mode. And for the balance of the time we're together, the community will have an opportunity to speak, and Nicole will give you more instruction around that. And then we'll see if either of the chiefs would like to make a comment at the end. And then we'll talk about wrap up and next steps. And that's the way we've laid it out. With us tonight are Chief Scott Gunnard from the police department, Chief Ed Walker from Peterborough Fire and Rescue. Fellow select board members Tyler Ward and Bill Taylor are also on. And Nicole McStay, as you know, is helping to facilitate, and Fosh is downstairs making sure the technology works. Thank you, Fosh. Okay, so to begin, the recent incidents of racial violence in our country have given rise to protests demanding equal justice for people of color in communities across the globe. Hundreds of Peterborough residents have joined protests for the last several weeks, and dozens have signed their names to a letter earlier this month asking for more transparency in our policing. Calls have also been made for an examination of the role of local police departments and the reallocation of funds that more appropriately address community mental health needs, often at the heart of calls for help. This weekend, local young people held a rally to share their perspectives on racism in our school system. Peterborough has a strong tradition of coming together in conversation to address difficult issues, thoughtfully, respectfully, hopefully. Tonight's listening session is a continuation of this tradition, albeit using technology, since gathering in person during the pandemic presents risks to our health. We expect that this will be a first step that allows leadership to hear and understand what members of our community experience, feel, question, and think, and that will ultimately inform what next steps are important to take. I want to thank Chief Scott Gunnard of the Police Department for his openness to this process and his unwavering commitment to this community. I want to thank Chief Ed Walker for bringing his unique perspective as a first responder. And I want to thank the Peterborough Select Board, Tyler Ward and Bill Taylor, myself, for the commitment to this process and leadership throughout. The Peterborough Select Board supports our police department in its efforts to ensure that Peterborough is a welcoming, safe, and tolerant community, and is committed to working to identify and address concerns anyone may have. And so now I'll turn it over to Nicole to talk about the logistics and guidelines.
Thanks, everybody. This is a listening session, which is different from a conversation. The panel will not be answering questions during the session. We will be listening. This is a first opportunity to be heard. Questions, experiences, and ideas that you share will be used to help determine our next steps. We expect that there will be future conversations based on what we hear tonight. This is a public event, and we are recording the session in its entirety. In order that we hear from everyone who wants to participate, we ask that we all follow these guidelines. Each person will have one opportunity to speak, and depending on how many want to speak, a maximum of 2 to 3 minutes. Please consider preparing your comments in advance of raising your hand. I will call on you either by name or the last 4 digits of your phone number if you are calling in, and unmute you so that you may speak. Please identify yourself with your name and whether you live or work in Peterborough before speaking. It will be most helpful if you share your own experience versus general information. If you are exceeding the time allotted, we will ask you to wrap up to allow for others to speak. Thank you in advance for following the guidelines.
Thanks, Nicole.
And I will say that we already have 51 people participating, so we will probably be holding to that shorter 2-minute window. And I will say that we already have 51 people participating, so we will probably be holding to that shorter 2-minute window.
Great, thank you. I'd like to give Chief Gennard an opportunity to make opening comments.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being a part of this. Just to identify who I am, I'm Scott Gennard. I live here in Peterborough. I'm Chief of Police. I've been with the department for 34 years now, been the police chief for 23 years. And I look forward to hearing what you folks have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Walker?
Thank you, Karen. Ed Walker. I am the Fire Chief Emergency Management Director here in Peterborough. And also we run the ambulance service for the towns of Peterborough, Temple, Hancock, Dublin, Francistown, and Sharon. I've been in this position since May of 2014. I have a little over 37 years in fire and emergency services. And again, to echo what Chief Gennard said, I'm happy to be part of this process and excited to see how we as a community move forward and navigate through these issues.
Thank you. All right, we're going to begin. And so we're going into listening mode. Nicole, you're going to manage flow, and let's go.
So again, please use the raise hand function. Okay, Ivor and Brianna.
Hello, so good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming and joining. Chief Scott Gennard, thank you for listening to us. I'm a Black man, a resident here of Peterborough. I also own a business here. And yes, I have suffered from police brutality, not here, but in Ohio. But I really wanted to speak up because there's a group called Train for Transformation, and it goes around and does community conscious policing, implementing best practices in community conscious policing. It's been around since 2012 for about 8 years. They have a track record with the Oakland Police, in Vermont, with Portland. We're also working with, I won't mention any names, but we're working with some of the departments in the area, but really we're looking at, reducing the rates of police brutality and trying to just reduce the violence that some of us experience. So I wanted to reach out to you and bring this to your attention earlier, but this kind of seemed to be a good forum to do it. And I intend to reach out after this call to the department and let you know about us. the training has been replicated in many police departments, and there are police departments that the community does speak highly of, even if they had a bad past. And this is one of the avenues to get there. So yeah, I just wanted to mention Train for Transformation, and I'll be contacting the department after this. So thank you very much. All right.
Thanks, Ivor. Okay. We now have 56 participants, so just keep in mind as you raise your hand to speak that you'll be given 2 minutes. Not seeing anyone putting their hand up. There we go. Oliver?
Hi, I'm Oliver Ward, Tyler Ward of the Select Board's son, and also one of the, I guess, troublesome youth involved in the townhouse demonstration last week. And our biggest kind of response to that, I think a lot has been with the messaging that we angry college kids have been using, because a lot of us are very sort of gung-ho with the defund the police, all cops are bad kind of messaging. And I think with that, I think it's been difficult to communicate sometimes because like I understand why defund the police sounds very scary and like a very new kind of outlandish idea. And I think we are also guilty of not communicating what we mean by that exactly. But I wanted to, I'm not going to get into that super intensely right now, but I wanted to point out that I'm unsure how to phrase it, I guess. But when we talk about like thinking all police are bad or whatever, it's not meant to be necessarily an individual attack. It is a discussion of the system of policing in our country. And so I understand, and I'm very grateful for how Chief Guinard spoke on the town meeting a few days ago, or last couple weeks ago maybe, and that the Peterborough Police Force does seem to be made up of very good people and doing things a lot better than the majority of the country. But the more and more I read about it, I'm kind of horrified by the way policing has run in our country and what it was created for and what my understanding of what policing is actually for, which seems pretty antithetical to the supposed protect and serve thing that we might be doing okay in Peterborough with, but that doesn't mean that it's not a problem that we are complicit in just because it's not necessarily happening here because we got lucky with a good group of people. And I think I'll close it off with saying Dan Weeks had a good thing in the paper today about how much racism is a systemic problem and less of an individual problem. And I thought he put it really well, so I highly recommend people check that out. Because again, I do get the impression that the Peterborough police officers and department are good people and people speak highly of them as individuals, and we don't mean to be attacking the individuals. We are attacking the system and trying to point out why how even though it's not maybe not happening here that we know of, we're still complicit in various ways. And that was rambly, and I should have prepared that better, but that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Okay. Not seeing anyone's hands up. There we go. Donald? Or Douglas, I'm sorry, Douglas Sutherland?
Hi, my name is Doug Sutherland. I am a resident of Hancock, but I work in Peterborough. Unfortunately, I'm working more in Peterborough this summer. I'm a executive director of Brentwood Camp, and our office is in Peterborough, so I won't be up at camp. I'll probably be in the office more this summer. Anyway, I wanted to, like I said, I live in Hancock, and it's something, I wanted to bring up something that is not necessarily, for Hancock or for Peterborough, but it's something that happens across the country with Black families. And even as I believe Oliver was saying that, the police officers in Peterborough and in Hancock are good people. But one thing that always happens, well, I shouldn't say always, I want to put that on everyone, but I know for me growing up, I had the talk about police officers. And with all of this happening, I have considered, or about dealing with the police. And the talk basically was, don't make them mad, do exactly what they say when they say it, because we want you to come home safe. With all this stuff that's happening, that has happened for years now, and these last few incidents, that talk means a lot more to me now than it's ever has before, because what I realized is that I don't know if I get pulled over who is coming to my car door. I don't know if there are lights outside my house, police lights outside my house, who is going to be knocking on the door. And that scares me, even though I know I have not done anything other than maybe speed, maybe make a turn the wrong way. And I bring this up only because as a Black man, I feel like I don't know. Even if I know who you are, I don't know what mood you're going to be in that day. And especially in the current atmosphere, I don't know if you're going to be bitter, I'm speaking to police officers, about what's happened to other police officers in other parts of the country, and I am going to be the brunt of that. And are you going to be worried about what I'm going to say? So when people say to me, or don't do anything wrong, I don't think it matters, because I don't know who's coming to my car door. And that scares me. Again, police officers in Peterborough and in Hancock, I'm sure you're great people. I know some of you, but, I don't know who's coming to the door. And I only say this because I would like police officers to understand that it's not as easy as doing what you say. There is fear out there, not of you, but of the institution. And the institution scares people. If I don't do what you say, I could die. Not I would get in trouble, not I would go to jail, but I could die. And I think that's what a lot of people that look like me are worried about. And that's what they're scared of. And they will continue to be scared because of what's been happening. And I say this because I want police officers to understand that it's not necessarily out of disrespect, it's out of fear. And I understand also that you may also be afraid, and I get that. Because both sides are afraid, we have to do something different. This is not good for me, it's not good for my stress level. You don't want to, I don't want to be the next name because you are afraid. That's what I think about. That's what I think about. And I just wanted to share that with the police officers and with the community, that this is something that is real, and it's not just, justice, it's life, And if I do something wrong, I don't deserve to die for it. That is not, I don't think that's what the police do. So what do? I try not to do anything wrong because I don't want the police to come after me.
Thank you so much, Doug.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay. Ivy.
Am I unmuted? I am.
You are unmuted.
I have to undo my ear so I can hear myself. One of the things that Hugh and I were just talking about was the whole question of one of the primary tenets of the whole idea of defunding the police is not that we're going to starve the police of funds, but that we need to reallocate funds so that the police don't have to be everything for every incident, for everybody. And I guess one of the questions I have is for Chief Gennard. how much of what the Peterborough police spends their time doing, is it your sense that maybe could be handled? I mean, you know, how much of it is lost dogs and, I don't know, you know, drunk husbands that maybe could be handled by someone who's not an armed policeman? So that's a question for Scott.
Okay, just hold on one second, Scott. You got to raise your hand to jump to the top of the list. We got 61 people here, so. I found you, Scott. You can go ahead.
Okay. I don't have the answer to that immediately, Ivy. I did speak to Karen, I believe through email as early as yesterday, running some numbers regarding how many calls we respond to where mental health is a factor. So as far as breaking down how much we spend in different areas, I don't have the immediate answer to that. That would take some time in working with our software. But that's something we'll make a note of, and hopefully I'll have an answer for you soon.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder that we're going to be collecting questions rather than answering them. Little quick one like that is fairly straightforward to answer, but we would hope that you would ask the questions and then not expect an answer tonight, or email the questions to us at community@peterborough.nh.gov. Karen's posted that into the chat window, or you could email any of us directly. All right. Next, I see Zach. Zach Green, go ahead. Hold on. Whoa. All right. I think you've muted yourself, Zach. There we go.
Okay, I think I'm good now. Okay. I want to say thank you to everyone who's here, and I want to, especially Doug's words just now, I think should have given all of us chills and centered why we are here. And I guess I feel like I kind of misinterpreted this format, and I think it's really hard to have just one side of a conversation that is just listening, as important as it is, as critical as it is. This being the second sort of open forum we've had with Chief Gennard, I guess where I'm at is I really want to hear from Chief Gennard, from his heart, from where you stand in this moment. What does defund mean to you? What does it say to you? Do you fear for the future of policing, or do you open this or accept this as an open invitation to changing and to making our community better? So that would be my question. I'm absolutely open to waiting to hear that answer, but I think we're all here kind of, I don't think I'm the only one looking for that. So I'll leave it on that.
Okay, thank you. Emma?
Hey y'all, I just wanted to come on and tell you about an experience that happened to me. I'm just gonna read it. So 2 years ago, I was walking on Grove Street around midnight. There was a rare Pokemon out in front of the post office, and I really wanted to grab it. I took my partner's phone because he wanted it too. So I walked a block from my apartment. I saw a man dressed in all black walk into Putnam Park, and I was immediately scared. I was walking alone. And so I crossed the street to stand in front of Fry, and I dialed 911 on my phone just to be ready because I was already scared. But to get back to my apartment, which were the red apartments on Grove, I needed to pass Putnam Park, so I was kind of like waiting a little bit. The man immediately left Putnam and crossed the street and started following behind me. He got closer to me and yelled for me to stop. He said he was a police officer and that I needed to show him some ID. I refused. I'm just walking in town. I wasn't doing anything wrong. He showed me a badge that was hanging around his neck. And again, I wasn't doing anything suspicious. I wasn't breaking any laws. We stood there for a few minutes, him continuously asking me for ID, me refusing, me begging to go to my apartment and stand with my partner, him refusing. I had my partner's phone, so I couldn't call him. Then a cruiser drove by and stopped next to us. It was an officer I knew, and he said hi to me. The cruiser left, and the undercover officer said to me, "Phew, you really scared me." Imagine that I scared him. You can question if my race was a factor. I think it was. I don't think he would have stopped a young white woman that night. Even before this experience, I didn't feel safe in this town, and my Black and brown friends have expressed that to me as well, and other experiences they've had with local police. And I laugh at myself now for having 911 up on my phone when the cops I thought would have come to protect me were already standing in front of me, yelling at me to show ID. So some questions I have is, if the Peterborough police are here to help us, why are they walking down our streets in plain clothes, undercover essentially? Why do I need another officer to vouch that I belong here? The fact that the other officer said hi to me made him drop the entire thing. He thought I was guilty of something until another officer recognized me, which I don't understand. And what would my ID have proved to him? That I belong here, that my eyes are brown when they were looking for a blue-eyed person? And why do so many, why does a majority white town have so much faith that your Black and brown community members feel safe or are safe? I don't feel safe in this town.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Emma. And I'd like to follow up on that. So if you're comfortable emailing me, I'd like to maybe get in contact with you and get some more details. My email address is nmaxday@peterborough.nh.gov. Okay. Karen, hold on one second, unless you want to raise your hand and then you'll pop right to the top. Okay, go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. I just want to respond to the questions that we're getting right now about why this is a listening session and not a conversation. I think for the very reason that we need to hear about the experiences that people in our community are having. And before we get into a deeper conversation and a back and forth, and before we have where we would be able to kind of go off deeply into one direction and then perhaps preclude others from weighing in, we felt the best approach this first time, which it really is, and with the community, is this listening session. But as we said at the beginning, this is not the end of it. This is the beginning. So please just trust this process with us. We're doing what we think is right. And we will have more, but we need tonight to just be able to hear from you. So thank you for being willing to just go with it.
And I'd also like to add that there are 63 of us all together on this call. And so if we're going to hear from as many people as possible, we do have to hold off taking questions and answering them until later. Okay, next I have Dory.
Hi, Dory Drachman. A question that came up for me as I've been learning more about how militarized the police forces in so many communities, including small rural communities, have become, is to what level do we have, does our police department have access to formerly military equipment that could be used in a situation here that is absolutely not warranted because there's no war going on? And I just don't know the answer to that, and I would be really interested to know.
All right, thank you, Dory. Next we have Caitlin Manfrey.
Hi everyone. My name is Caitlin Manfrey. I grew up in Peterborough, and I have been living in Washington, D.C. I have relocated here during the pandemic, and maybe we'll stay. I don't know. But I just wanted to respond to some of the things that I've been hearing over the last few weeks. I've been here for all of this conversation as it's unfolded in this community that I love very deeply. The biggest frustrating thing that has really gotten under my skin about this is that the response from many community members seems to be, but this doesn't happen here. And while I do not believe that the members of the Peterborough Police Department are malevolent people or are out to get us, I had an experience when I was growing up here that I think is just worthwhile to add to the hopper in this conversation. In 2005, my friends and I were stopped on Grove Street one evening, and we were accused by the police of yelling, so sorry for the language, "fuck the police," out the window of my friend's minivan. We were 5 teenagers, and the police officers knew our parents. They demanded ID. They threatened to take away my friend's license, who was the driver of the vehicle, until somebody fessed up and said that they said it. It was a very confusing, very traumatic experience for all of us. It was my first run-in with the police at that age. I was 16, 17 years old. We'd all freshly gotten our driver's licenses. We were not breaking the law. And I think that what we tend to leave out of this conversation in a small town like this is that the culture of policing is such that there is so much power on one side and so little accountability that even when a complaint was filed after this incident, we don't know what happened. I don't know if the officers who essentially harassed us and forced us to get out of the car and answer a lot of questions and all of these things that were very confusing to us as children, if they were ever held accountable for those. I don't think they were. And I just want to say that we were a minivan full of white teenagers, and many of whom have parents who are prominent members of this community. And I shudder to think about what would happen if we were not those people. If we were driving a car with out-of-state plates, if we were Black or brown individuals, if we weren't from here, how that evening would have ended. And so I just want to add that to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Okay. Oh, I just lost someone who had their hand up. If you want to add to the conversation, please put your hand up. Thank you. All right, Rochelle.
Hi, my name is Rochelle Bodwin. I live in Peterborough. And like Caitlin, I just want to share my own experience. And I believe actually some of the board members and the chief are sort of familiar with my experience. And I won't go into like great detail, but there were several occasions when I felt dismissed by the police after calling because I feared for my personal safety at my home. And dismissed in a couple of different ways, sort of felt unheard, and was just really put off because I had literally ran and was out of breath in one situation. And the responding officer talked about his service in Iraq, which I'm sure was important and traumatic, but did not relate to my current situation. And another time, my husband and I were home, called about the same situation, and the responding officer, I felt, truly escalated the situation by sort of mocking us and making a remark about why we purchased our home in this location. And it was just like so hard to get back down, and I could see my husband was getting more upset and I was getting more upset. And I felt like this person pushed us by doing these things and making these comments, right? So I felt like there was the opposite of de-escalation. And now in this given climate, I actually, again, like Caitlin, sort of shudder to think about what would happen if this individual encountered people of color. I can't fully empathize with what they would experience, but from my own personal experience, I felt like it was going up and up and up, and that I was fearful of something I might do or my husband might do because we were getting so pissed off, frankly. And so I just am curious about de-escalation training, because my experience felt like that was not something these people had experienced, or even a kind of active listening type of training, because I felt, again, very unheard and in some cases actually pushed in my personal experience.
Okay. Thank you, Rochelle. Okay. Angela?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
My name is Angela, and I really appreciate you holding this forum and listening to members of the community. I'm a pretty new resident here in Peterborough. Some of the thoughts that I want to share. One, the more I learn about the history of policing as an institution, it to me is incredibly disturbing. From the initial days to really lock up, loan out prison labor to essentially be a new form of slavery. I think obviously we've come a long way from that, but I think the remnants of that deep institutional racism exist in our policing structures in our country. And I feel like, to me, it's really exciting that we're in this moment of new opportunity. And I think it will look different in Boston, Massachusetts, than it will look in Peterborough, New Hampshire. But I think that each town, we should each look at our budget and say, you know, whether it's 5 million or 500,000, and say, this is the money that we have to spend on public safety. And if we're in this new moment, how should we spend that money? What do we spend on social workers? What do we spend on mental health? I suspect in Peterborough, if we took a hard look, we wouldn't, you know, I don't know how many there is. Maybe there's 9 officers, 10 officers. I suspect that would not be the top choice at this moment. So I feel like it's a really exciting moment, and I feel like Peterborough is in a place that could be really cutting edge with trying out new things. And I just feel like we have a responsibility to be stepping forward and leading and testing out new models. And I say that with, I don't know the police officers personally. I don't feel like it's a personal thing. I think that if we were to do this, it'd have to be done sensitively, and people, you know, could be find roles and jobs and, you know, for everyone that it aligns with their strengths. But I feel like we're really not listening to this moment if we just tinker around the edges.
Okay. Thank you so much, Angela. All right, Grace.
Hi, thank you. Really happy to see so many people on the call and taking the time to have this conversation, and thank you to everybody who organized it. I just wanted to share an experience. You know what? I'm gonna turn my fan. I'm gonna turn my fan off. I don't know if it's too loud. Sorry, it's hot in here. So 1 second. This is a couple of years ago, and I was, I'm from Dublin, and I was heading home from East Mountain Road and came onto 101. My bandmate was behind me, and I pulled into the gas station, and when I was there, he texted that my taillight was out. So I'm just up on 101, I pulled back out, and got pulled over, and the officer pulled me up just past Shaw's. So the officer came up on my passenger side window, and my, phone was down in the console, and there was just a lot of questions about, and I said, oh, I think I know what this is. I have my tail light out. I said, my, bandmate just texted me. She was like, oh, so you were on your phone? And I was like, no, I was just at the gas station. She was like, well, it's not like you would tell me the truth. And while my car window was down, I had a basket on my car seat. And she had a flashlight and looked in, and she said, oh, do you mind? And she reached into my car, into the basket, to pull out what was broccoli from my CSA. And after she said, well, it's not like you would tell me the truth, I didn't say much at all. I was just trying to get out of there. And so I left, and I didn't say anything because, you know, it is left to people of color to navigate and guess whether or not what people's intentions are, or what kind of, yeah, you know, it's like I didn't feel comfortable going to report it because, you know, being one of the few people of color conspicuous in the area, I don't know what would happen. And I have had friends coming to visit me, miss my driveway and get immediately pulled over, like, where are you going? What are you doing? And that was, you know, not in Peterborough, that was in my town. And I, you know, I have, you know, I have respect for police officers, and I know that implicit bias is a real thing. So the vigilance that is required of people of color is exhausting, and it creates a different feeling of home. You know, it is hard to feel at home when you're constantly vigilant, and I'm wondering if people see your humanity. So that's just what I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. Okay. Sarah? And I think I just muted you again by accident. There you go. You should be all.
Is that good?
There we go.
Hi. I guess I'm struck by how so many of us have taken time, and now I'm going to do it too, to say to Chief Kennard how much I appreciate you, and how I know that this is not personal for me, and how it's more about the systems. But I kind of also hate that I have to say that, because I know Chief Kennard knows who I am, even if he doesn't remember my name. We've done many things in CIP meetings and stuff, but I shouldn't have to do that. I'm here because we're all a community, and we all are trying to see each other's humanity. So it's made me sad every time I've heard someone have to say, but it's not about the Peterborough police. I think, Chief Kennard, I believe you know that from things I've heard you say just in the last couple of weeks. So I just want to echo Angela, I think her name was Angela, talking about an opportunity for transparency in budget. And I'd like to see more transparency in the budget for the police department. I'd like to see more transparency about, and I've already spoken, I know Zach did too, with Karen Hatcher about this. I don't really know who our police officers are. There's no page where I can go to and see who they are, and that makes me frightened. So I know that people who feel more vulnerable than I am, people of color, Black people, are gonna feel frightened, because I know I feel frightened. So I know where that's gonna go. I feel frightened. We needed the police to come one night for a car accident in front of our house, and I didn't know any of the officers, and it made me uncomfortable. So I'd just like to see more transparency about what the dollars are spent on. I'd like to see more transparency about equipment. I'd like to see more transparency about trainings. And I know we've started to talk about that a little bit, but I feel like the transparency should also become part of our normal cycle of breathing as a town, because we have, like Angela said, we have this opportunity, we have this moment. So what are we going to do? And I know I've heard other people say this, so it's not an original thought, but Peterborough likes to do things extra shiny, extra new, extra, you know, like special. So why don't we spearhead this for the whole region, and maybe set a standard for the whole state about how we can do that? Because I feel like we need more transparency as we talk about this, because this is a matter of life and death for people. So
thank you so much, Sarah. Okay, Anna McGinnis.
Hi. So I'm a Hancock resident, but an ex-Conval student, another one of the students from the protest on Saturday. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about, I think some of the wonderful people of color from our towns have made it really, really clear that they don't feel safe in our towns. And that's really important to recognize when we say things like, I'm sure it's not the Peterborough police. I'm sure like it's not the Hancock police. We shouldn't just say that, because I think they've made it really clear in many ways that it is. But also I want to point out that a lot of the people that are really victimized by police brutality and police violence in our towns are people who do not have the privilege to be on Zoom calls with us tonight, are people who are homeless, people who are very severely mentally ill, and who are criminalized by the justice system, and are put through the justice system because they are failed by our towns, by the resources that we don't have right now to give them. People like kids who went to my high school who everybody knew were sick and they never got therapy, and everybody called them weird and wouldn't talk to them, and they never ever got any sort of help, and then they graduated and nobody helped them still, and then they hurt someone and the police in some other town arrested them and they went to jail and nobody ever heard about them again. And they're not on this Zoom call with us, you know, those kids, because they don't have the privilege to be. And those are the kind of people that are like really, really hurt in our towns very badly by this whole complex of police violence. And it doesn't look like police violence in the traditional sense because they don't get slammed to the ground. Nobody films them getting brutalized. And it's not as racialized necessarily because a lot of these kids are white. A lot of this area is white. But many of these kids are Black and brown because of how poverty works in this area. And it is really, really important for us to recognize when we're having these conversations that we need to stop saying it doesn't happen here and that it's not the Peterborough PD, because some of the people
Anna,
that are, yeah.
I'm sorry, just need to.
I know, I'm gonna wrap it up. But like the people who are harmed they're in our justice system and they're really very badly hurt. So there's a lot we need to like acknowledge, I think.
Thank you. Okay. Brendan?
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, hi Karen. Thank you, Chief Walker and Grenard and everybody for being on this. From everything I've heard, as well as I've experienced living out of state and back in New Hampshire, these are all very valid points. It's a shame that there is fear of somebody in uniform, regardless of who they are, just as it's a shame that people don't automatically respect people without regard to their skin color or their choice of clothing or their hairstyle. I think really a hard part as a community we also need to remember though is we cannot blindly distrust our cops because they're a cop. We have to also realize they're individuals as well. We may have different cops now than we had before. I've only lived in this town for 3 years. And we have to just remember that they're individuals just as we are. And this is not to say to discount anybody's experiences, but to say, you know, we need to apply it to other people and to ourselves, not just assume all cops are bad or to assume any person of color is good or bad. We're all individuals. And I think that's something that this meeting is helping us all learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. Just a reminder, folks, to use the raise hand function. So that way your name jumps to the top of the list. There are 66 people on this call, so I won't necessarily see you if you're waving at me. Okay, I'm trying to unmute. There we go. Julie?
Hi, Nicole. How are you? Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Bonvie. Have lived in the area 47 years. I live in Hancock, but my family pays $60,000 in property taxes in Peterborough. Yeah, I have to say, and I agree with the last gentleman that talked, I don't want to discount anybody's thoughts or feelings. And I think this is really an important dialogue. And I appreciate Peterborough having the open forum to discuss it. I do get concerned when I hear that we want to try to cut funding to the Peterborough Police. And I'll share with you a story that around a year ago, after midnight, I had an incident outside my house in Hancock where a gentleman pulled a gun to his girlfriend's head, and she told him to pull the trigger. They were coming back from last call at Harlow's to find out after the fact. But it was the Peterborough Police who showed up at my house within 10 minutes of that call. We own businesses in Peterborough. There's been numerous times I've had to incorporate Chief Gennard and his leadership team into incidences that, quite honestly, 47 years ago, we didn't have up in this area. So to talk about defunding, and I'm not saying there isn't a need to fund other areas, there absolutely is. But to take it from the Peterborough Police Department is a really scary thought for me as a longtime resident, as well as business owners here in the Peterborough area. So appreciate the forum, appreciate the open dialogue. And I want to thank Scott Gennard on behalf of the Healy family for his leadership and for everything that he's done to assist this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Before I take comments from repeat people, does anyone else want to speak? Okay. Marissa, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Storm Welch. I live and work in Peterborough. And I just want to respond, not respond, but just ask the question, since dismantling systems of oppression and racism, it just takes, it's an ongoing process and the work is never going to be done. It just takes constant work and accountability and conversation as well as self-reflection. And I do believe it's a social responsibility, but it is a personal responsibility as well, because like you guys said, we are individuals. And I'm just wondering how, if the police department wants to keep contributing and being a part of this community, how are you going to maintain that work and hold each other accountable and continue to self-educate and educate each other and acknowledge your own intersecting privileges. And I'm wondering this, with including race and including gender. Yeah, so I want to know how you guys are going to maintain that work, because it's something that I think our entire community is working on as well, on both personal and communal levels. So okay. That's all I have to ask.
Thanks, Marissa. Okay. Dennis?
Hi, thank you for having the conversation. My name's Dennis Calcutt. I live in Francistown, but work in Peterborough as well as throughout the Monadnock region. And I think the conversation is critical. I think the next steps are even more critical. I think the challenge that we all face is our ability to think about, as I think Anna said, the people who aren't here in this call and the people who don't feel like it's safe enough to even have the conversation or to participate in the conversation. I think it is evident, and I think it is, systems have moved along, but it is evident that that these are not, it is about our community. It is about our police departments, because the experiences that people have are evident in this call in both ways. But I think it's critical of how we want our community to respond and how we bring people's voices to the table. And I think most importantly, how do we bring all those voices to the table in a safe way? Because that's so hard for people who may not feel like it's even safe for them to talk in this forum. So, but most importantly, it's starting the process, and thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Eddie?
Hello?
Yep. There you go.
Cool. Eddie Gomez of Peterborough. I just wanted to add a couple ideas on kind of going off what Storm was saying about like the work we're doing on ourselves, but I wanted to know like what type of diversity, equity, and inclusion training that the officers go through, what kind of white supremacy training they go they get, or if that's like something that's could be done, because you know the nature of our society is patriarchal, colonialism, and white supremacy, and we all are swimming in this water, and it's hard to realize or like identify the water swimming in because you know it's all around you. But having like a professional come in and give these trainings to help them understand biases that they may have never even thought about, and help them work on those. And the second thing was, like we're talking about real allocations of funds, and someone mentioned earlier like how many of those are you know this type of disturbance, etc. Or like, you know, mental illness, if there is maybe allocating some funds, like having like a social worker on retainer by the town would be like kind of a possibility. But that way the cops aren't being called for the same disturbance, you know, 10 times and then without ever addressing, you know, the exact issue. Another thing was, you know, like, or for example, the Dover police, the police in Stratford County, they partner with the Community Action Partnership of Stratford County, and when they encounter homeless people experiencing homelessness, they direct them to get the help that they need. So they're like a liaison in that way. And if there could be more partnerships like that, and we can identify what nonprofits are doing what work and making sure that those relationships are there. And the last thing real quick, I just want to share one of my experiences with the police was I was coming home with a group of friends from Cooper's one night, and we were going through the new parking lot, and there was a couple cops there, and there was a young man that they were speaking to. I wasn't really sure what was going on, but my instinct is always to get out my phone, get out my camera, and record what's happening as just like a bystander. So I started doing that, and I didn't engage with the cops or anything. And then the cop turned to me and he was like, "Oh, you're making a movie over there?" He's like, "Oh, what are you doing? Oh, why are you filming?" And like was heckling me about filming, and acted. And I was like, "I'm just you know recording what's happening, you know, as like my civic duty that I feel." And he was acting like he had never heard of people doing that, and it was just really weird. He like I felt that he was intimidating me to stop filming, and you know it's like, and that was just a not good. At time. Okay, cool. I think that's all I have. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. Hey, David?
Hello, I'm David Blair. I live in Harrisville, and I've worked most of my life in Peterborough for 8 years as the director of the ESL program for the Conval School District. So I got to work with many children, immigrants, refugees, many children of color, particularly the Cambodian community. And I think overall the Cambodian community has been very welcomed here in Peterborough and has really done a remarkable job given what they came from in establishing themselves as valuable contributing members of the community. There were racist incidents that happened in schools. Children taunted on the school bus, for instance. I heard about some of them, but certainly not all of them. And that just reminds me that the responsibility to address racism belongs to all of us. And to teachers, to parents, to bystanders who can be upstanders. We all have a role in addressing it. And when we do not do that, it can put the police in a difficult position. I remember the incident several years back when a couple of African-American actors at the Peterborough Players were, I think, hanging out waiting for something at, I believe it was at CVS, and someone called the police because there were two black men in the store and it was suspicious. I don't remember how the police handled it, but this is sort of like the woman calling the police on a black bird watcher in Central Park. We all have a role in monitoring our own thoughts and our own attitudes, and also watching what's happening around us. The police should never have been called in that incident, in my opinion. Thank you for having this conversation.
Thank you, David. Okay. Harriet?
It's somewhat of a follow-up to what Davis said. I'm from Hancock, and I think we've heard that there are a lot of people who can't be on this kind of call tonight. And also there are people who don't know the ramifications if they were on the call because of the fear of the police. And I think it'd be worthwhile to explore some kind of ongoing way of the community intersecting with the police department to provide input into what they're hearing when they're seeing something different, something that's being handled, and they might suggest a different way, so that it's not a one-shot training, it's an ongoing kind of developing of an understanding of the differences that we have in this community and the different values that people have coming from different cultures and races. So hopefully that's something that can be considered.
Thank you. All right, Zach?
So this isn't specifically a race-related incident, but it was an experience I had with the police within the past year, and I'm presenting it to kind of go to a broader place with it. But a year ago, almost a year ago, my father passed away, and in my home, in my childhood home, and along with several first responders who attempted to resuscitate my father, there were two officers that were dispatched to my house. I was told that they were there to, that they were duty bound or legally bound, I'm not sure, to make sure that there was no foul play. My father had cancer. He died pretty suddenly from what I believe was an aneurysm. And so the officers stood in my dining room waiting for the coroner to show up. And, you know, they were there, and I don't know, it was a very chaotic evening, and I probably don't have all the details correctly, but it almost felt as though they were kind of making small talk with each other to keep each other company. And it was a very uncomfortable feeling to have that presence in my home under one of the most awful and stressful and chaotic experiences of my life. So I'm wondering how we change sort of create a level of trust that doesn't bring, you know, that response into our homes, where there has to be the suggestion that there might be foul play, or that, you know, so I guess I'm wondering, like, in keeping with how we're talking about changing policing in this country and utilizing better social services, is there a way that we can dispatch people that are not police officers, or people that are trained to not be having small talk during a moment of crisis and panic? So
Thank you. Doug?
Hello, everyone again. Doug from Hancock, work in Peterborough. Sorry about the weird lighting. And listening to what people were saying, I want to say that, you know, and I firmly believe that if there was an emergency at my house, or on my on my person with my family, and I call 911, I have no doubt that police and fire department and first responders would respond real quick. You know, I'm always, and working in summer camps and calling 911, they are always there. And that's not a fear that I have in case of emergency. And I think, you know, when talking about policing, the idea of, you know, police doing the thing that they do really well is responding to an emergency. However, what my concern is not the emergency. It's the randomness of it. It's the, you know, they think that there might be trouble. That's the part that worries me. I believe it was, I want to say Eddie talked about earlier asked about the training that they go through. And I talk a lot with people here in Hancock and people in Peterborough and just talks in Dublin with people wanting to talk about race. The one issue that all those places have is that they say there are no black people to talk to. You know, so when I think about the officers being trained, I wonder who's doing the training. Like, and what are you talking about? Like, if you're talking about dealing with issues of race in the department, and if people from out of state, out of town come in, what is that training? And are you actually doing it, I guess? And if there's a whole bunch of white people sitting around a table and you're talking about race, it's really hard. And it's really hard. Not that you can't, and I wholeheartedly, with my entire soul, want you to talk about race, because I can't be there. And if you want me to be there, I will be there tomorrow, and I will talk to you about race because I want this to happen. But I can't always be there. You have to talk about it. People on this call have to talk about it without a black person in the room. You can't just say, oh, well, there's no black person, so we're good. We're good. Like, that's what's been happening for years. Talk about it. Say something about it. Stand up and say something, because I can't always be there. And other people on this call may not want to be there. So I highly encourage you, whatever training it is, you know, look into it, get the best people out there as possible, you know, and if it's a black person, great. Person of color, great. If it's a white person, I don't care. Have the conversation. I think that's only going to help us all in the long run. And real quick, I just want to say my personal experience with, you know, isn't necessarily with the police officers. It's with the people of Peterborough. You know, it's with the people that, as I'm walking through Bell Tates, that follow me around. It's the people that call me the N-word at Harlow's when I'm working there. It's the people that lock their doors when I walk by. It's not the police officers. Why? Because I'm an upstanding citizen. I pay my taxes. I don't make any mistakes. So why would the police mess with me? It's not them. It's people that don't work for the police. It's people that look at me and say, oh, you are a threat because of the color of your skin. That's what makes me fearful in town. It's not the police. I hope the police will help me out. I'm worried about the people that are not the police. The ones that will look at me for holding a sign and say, you know, oh, I see you. But those are the people that I can't put a sign on my car because they can follow me home. You know, I can't put a sign in my yard because they'll see where I live. That's who I'm worried about. I'm not, you know, I hope the police will be there because that's what they're supposed to be. But
thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
Lano? Am I saying that right?
It's Lono.
Lono.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm Lono Hunter. I'm a resident of Peterborough. I'm a father of 2 young black boys who have spent their whole lives here. I don't want to teach my boys to fear the police. I don't want to have to talk. I'm not equipped to provide the talk. But given the context that we're having this discussion, I mean, how can I not, right? You would too. So my boys are 4 and 8, and I think police should be the heroes. So I'll keep it short. My question to the town and to the police department is, do you want my boys growing up to fear you, or do you want to be heroes? Hire some social workers, hire some Black officers, hire some women, lock up the guns. That's all I have to contribute right now.
Thank you. Okay, Oliver?
Hi, me again, Oliver Ward. I just wanted to chime in quickly. A couple people have touched on it, I think David Blair and then someone else earlier, about the types of things that people will call the police to address. And I think myself and several other people have been talking recently about a sort of exercise where we've been going through the police log that's published in the paper, and we kind of question whether an armed officer is the right person to respond to that type of call, and also whether or not that call should be made in the first place. And I think the large majority of things you see in that police log, I don't know how, like, they're obviously not very detailed descriptions. I don't know how many things aren't published, but the majority of the stuff you see in that police log is not stuff that seems like it should even be a police officer's job to deal with. Or if it is, for example, in the paper today, there were a couple suspicious vehicle calls, and both of them were things where it shouldn't have been a suspicious vehicle. One was like at a trailhead where someone was hiking, and one was where someone was walking their dog. So I think there's a huge importance in seeing if there's a way we can kind of change that community culture, so we're not calling the police to ask for them to find our missing earrings, or to assume that any car we see or any person walking late at night is immediately a threat. And I don't know if there's something that the police can do or dispatchers can do to kind of reach out to people or kind of suggest other alternatives. I don't know what the process, like what they do if somebody calls with something that they're not equipped to handle. But seeing as a couple people had mentioned that, I figured it was worth expounding on. So thank you.
Thanks, Oliver. Bosch?
Yes, thank you, Nicole. My name is Fosh Farashai. I'm actually a town employee of 19 years. I just want to relay, I've lived in this area almost 20 years. I moved up here for school, and I have to echo Douglas that I have no fear of the police in this region. They've all been respectful all the time. I have incidents with residents, not in Peterborough, in different towns. So I have no fear of the police. I have a healthy respect. I learned a long time ago, you talk to somebody with respect, you usually get it back. Everybody's personal incidents. I think I want to just my personal experiences over the years, also with like when talking about reallocation of funds and social workers. I have an adoptive daughter. We adopted her when she was 5. She's 21 now. We had Nicole knows this. She's worked with her a long time. Numerous episodes with her, and sometimes it required the police, and because it got violent. And the thing is, we were usually talking to the therapist at the same time, but there's a time for the police to show up to address that acute crisis, handle that, episode, and then do the therapy. And part of this, the police are kind of hamstrung what they can do is part of the whole system of mental health care. So I just want to just acknowledge that reallocation of funds for social workers, but there is a time when you need a police officer there to quell that acute crisis, and then you move on to the social worker and the psychologist. So just discussions about reallocation of funds, there's appropriate times for a police officer and there's appropriate times for the social worker. Crisis, you want that cop there to quell that crisis, and then move on to the healthcare system, which is a whole other discussion. But that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Vosh. Hey, Eddie?
Hi, Eddie Gomez of Peterborough again. Let me start my timer really quick. Going off the reallocation of funds. Yeah, I think bringing in students at the school, teachers, parents, in addition to the police, obviously, and training is open to the community that that can recognize, like child abuse, depression, racism, and start talking about those things at a young age and tearing down the stigmas of, especially if things are happening in the schools and things. It's let's not be afraid to talk about it with people of all ages, and allocating funds to trainings on that. And there's simple things right now like the 5 Signs movement and stuff. But anyways, back to residents exhibiting racist tendencies. There's a pyramid, and I learned this because I took a white supremacy training, but there's a pyramid of white supremacy where at the top, is the KKK and hate crimes and stuff, but it builds upon all these other things like stereotypes, jokes, and all these low-key white supremacy racist things that are just built in to our society. And so that's where a lot of this stems from, is the day-to-day interactions and the biases. And I think that's it. Yeah. And real quick, on a capitalistic sense, if there's less crime, if people are happier, more productive, there's less fear, where our rates at school, people are going to more people are going to graduate, more people, better jobs and all this stuff. So yeah, I think I just want to throw that in there because I like throwing that capitalistic thing. Cool, thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Eddie. Okay, anybody else? I don't see any hands raised at the moment. And just a reminder, if you would like to speak, please use the raise hand tool. That way you'll pop right to the top of the list and I'll be able to unmute you. All right, I'm not seeing anyone, so Karen, I will turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. And thanks to everyone who spoke tonight. My heart hurts. There's so many places, so many people, I don't even know what to say. I just feel like I'm so sorry for those of you who have had the experiences you've had. It's heartbreaking and it's not right. So that's me personally saying that. My heart hurts tonight. But I also am hopeful because we are this community and we do have this ability to hear each other and to be in this conversation together. And I agree that this is an opportunity that is unique to the time we're living in. And so let us not miss it. If you do have other things you want to share, please do send an email to community@peterborough.nh.gov. I'm going to ask the chiefs if they want to make any comment at the end, but I want you to know that following this session, what we will do is review what we've heard, and we have it recorded so we can go back and listen again. We will take the questions that you have and it almost in the short run, take those questions and answer them to the best of our ability, and then publish those answers to the public so that people who are not on this call will know that this is what we talked about and this is what was discussed. Yes, Heather just posted a comment. Will we share this video? Yes, we will. We will post this video so that people who weren't here can hear our discussion. So the first thing is this Q&A, kind of getting those answers out. The next part will be looking at the bigger issues that really kind of emerged in this conversation, and then coming up with a preliminary plan to look at how do we take the next steps. And then we will bring it to the select board so that we can get their approval to move forward and then get to work. So there will be engagement, there will be outreach. If you are wanting to be someone involved in this process, feel like you want to get more involved in it, please send me an email, community@peterborough.nh.gov, and let me know that. And I'll make sure that I touch base with you. I think that's where we are. I think that's what we can do as of tonight. I really, really, really just want to thank everyone for being so honest, brave, open, willing, and creative. So thank you from me. And I want to give the chiefs a chance to say whatever might be there. So Chief Walker, you want to go first, and I'll give you a final word, Chief Kennard.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you to everybody else. It was, I think, to echo something that Karen said, it was pretty eye-opening for me to listen to this. I mean, I grew up, although I did not grow up in New Hampshire, I grew up in a community very similar to Peterborough in terms of its makeup and diversity and outlook. And I think it is interesting for me to hear a lot of what was said today, both by the adults and the young folks in this community and some of their experiences. So as I started out with, I am looking forward to us being able to go through this, and if healing needs to happen, heal, but definitely move forward as a community.
Thank you. Kennard?
Thank you. A lot of information to digest and move forward and work on. I heard a lot of questions about training tonight, and I can in part answer some of that. The governor's recently established Commission on Law Enforcement Accountability, Community and Transparency has met twice so far. They'll be meeting again this week. They have 45 days to report back to the governor. We, the law enforcement community throughout New Hampshire at all levels, are going to see a huge change in training standards and training mandates. And a lot of those are cultural diversity, de-escalation, and the list goes on. And I'm confident that those will be tools that we will all benefit from on the law enforcement level. But thank you all for your input. I took 5 pages of notes here, so look forward to addressing all of these questions and concerns with Cameron and the other team members.
Thank you, Chief. All right. And I just, I don't know, Tyler or Bill, if you guys are still on, if there's anything from the select board, or if you have a last word, a last word.
And if you guys want to raise your hands, if you want to say something. Thank you, Tyler. Go ahead, Tyler.
Sorry, I was taken aback by some of the things I heard tonight as well, and really moved. I'm glad that we're having this conversation. I'm committed to carrying it forward with the chiefs. And
if you guys want to raise your hands, if you want to say.
So, sorry, hearing some feedback there. So thank you everyone for sharing candidly and openly and honestly. It was certainly eye-opening. Thank you.
And Bill, I don't know if you want to have anything you want to say?
Bill, you're unmuted.
Can't hear anything.
Are you on? You're on.
You're on. You're unmuted, Bill. Go ahead.
Hi, it's Bill here. I can't. My internet connection is so messed up that I can't. I'm like listening to it on my phone 2 minutes behind or whatever, and this has really been amazing. I mean, if you're not struck by what you heard in this meeting, then you're not a human. It's what I really appreciate is people being able to step up in a forum like this in public and say what their experiences are, because we don't know. People don't know unless you speak up, and this is probably the first time that we've heard from a lot of you, and I think it's great. I really appreciate that kind of, or it's probably not appropriate, but it takes a lot of balls for people to stand up and talk like this, and I certainly appreciate it. And it takes a lot for the chief to sit here and listen to it, and what he's got to digest is massive. And I'm happy for this conversation. I'm happy for the future and where we go from here. So thank you, and thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. So I know people are wondering about what comes next. Stay tuned. Just give us a little time. We've got this work. We have town meeting coming up. We've got, it's big work. So let us get to the questions you asked. Let us try and work that through first. And then there will be another conversation. Just stay tuned. We will be out on social media, let you know what comes next. So thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.